Alright, in this video I'm going to talk about how to make glass look a little bit better in Blender. Glass has always been something that's been a little bit difficult for me to render and make look good. And these are just a few little things that I found over the last few years that helps make glass look better. I'm sure there are better ways to go about this, and someone could explain it way better than me, but this is my take on it. Alright, right now this is a very simple scene. I have a cube, cylinder, and an icosphere. And inside of these objects, I have a point lamp. And the point lamp is just set to 1000 watts and a 0.25 meters. Alright, if I was to put this in render view, it looks kind of crappy. For one thing, the light shining through just doesn't look good. And there are a few things you can do to try to make this look better. When it's like a primitive cube or a primitive cylinder or a primitive icosphere, Blender is treating it as a solid object. So it's like having a solid piece of glass with a light in the center. One of the things you can do to make it look better is to make it hollow from Blender's perspective. And that is the easiest way to go about it is go to the modifiers tab and add a solidify modifier. I'm going to turn that modifier on for the cube. And now the glass looks a little bit better. The edges are dark while the center portion is more transparent. Do the same thing to the cylinder. I turn the solidifier on. Looks a little bit better. And you can also see how the top part is darker because less light would come through at the angle that you're looking at it from this perspective, from the top. Most of the light's going to come through from the sides. And on the icosphere, same thing. Now I'm using the default settings on the solidify. Now, you may think that one of the things you could do is add like a smooth shading or shade smooth. And that looks fine if you're trying to make it look more spherical for this. But if you add like smooth shading for the cylinder, then it starts looking terrible again. And because there's not enough geometry on this icosphere, you start having these black parts, which make it look bad. And on this cylinder, it just kind of looks terrible. Now the cube object, shade smooth, that looks downright awful. Now you can kind of compensate for that by adding an edge split modifier, but then you're essentially right back to where you was at before. The caustics will look just a little bit better. The reflection, the light going through it when it reflects on something like the surface of this floor here, it looks a little bit better now. But you can see on the icosphere, you still don't have enough geometry, and it's still dark around the edges. And in my opinion, you wouldn't want a smooth shader on this icosphere unless you're actually trying to make it look like a sphere. And in that case, why wouldn't you just use a sphere? So on that, I'm definitely going to turn the shade smooth. Whoops, wrong one. This one. I definitely want to turn the shade flat back on. Now, how do I go about making this look a little bit better? Well, there's something some people don't even know about with Blender. It's a fairly new feature. I think it's only been around maybe a year and a half. I think it was around in some experimental builds before that. But they've started adding caustics. It's not they call it shadow caustics. Now, when it comes to caustics, you have to start with the light source. So I need to go to the point. Now, all of these are basically, all three of these point lamps are the same as this one. So if I change this one, it's going to change all of them. That's just how I have it set up here. Alright, I go to the point lamp, and then I turn on shadow caustics. See, there is a little bit of a difference. Not much, but a little bit of a difference. But the reason why there's no real difference is because you have to tell Blender which objects cast caustics or cast shadow caustics and which objects receive shadow caustics. So I'm going to go to the floor because that's the biggest thing there, and I'm going to go to its shading properties, and I'm going to say that it receives shadow caustics. Alright, now I need to go to each one of these cubes, or each one of these objects like this cube, and say that it casts shadow caustics. Now that made a big difference. Go to the cylinder, cast shadow caustics. Go to the icosphere, cast shadow caustics. Now the glass is starting to look like something. And quite frankly, you can get some neat appearances out of using shadow caustics and so forth, but the render time will drastically go up. Like, let me go ahead and shade this cube a slightly different color. Go to the materials tab, and I'll make this just slightly blue. Well, I forgot I've got all these the same material, so now I'm going to go to the cylinder and make this one kind of a red. Go to the icosphere and make this kind of a green. Now if I was to go to this and then turn off shadow caustics, it just does not look good at all. You just lose a whole lot of interesting. I guess that's the best way to say it. Now I want to do this comparison though. Alright, now I got this, let me see. I got this set to 256 samples. I want to render. This will render pretty fast. Got a 3080 Ti rendering this, and that just does not look good at all. Now, 4 seconds, 4.9 seconds. Alright, go back to 3D view, and I'm going to turn shadow caustics back on. And then render it. Of course, it's the first time you render, it's got to load up the render kernel, so whatever this shows, I'm going to restart it once it gets finished. Alright, it finally loaded the kernels, and I'm going to click I'm going to redo this. That way we can actually compare the render time. So it's already taken longer. See, it takes roughly twice as long to render with caustics turned on than without. So you got to keep that in mind. But it looks so much better. And I want to do one more thing before I bring an end to this. I'm going to add a wall behind it. So I'm going to just press 3 to go into side view. And add mesh, plane, and then let me go top side view. Scale, let me bring it just arbitrarily large. And then go back in the side view, rotate X 90, grab Y, and then just bring it back to about right here. And I also need to turn on receive shadow caustics for this as well. And then go back into it. See render view. You see now you have the reflection on the back wall and the front wall. It starts looking really interesting when you do that. Alright, now let me do a regular render. Render image. Alright, I guess that's pretty much it for this. Definitely not a tutorial, just a little bit of information about how ways I've found to make glass look better. I hope people has found this interesting. And I want to point out one more thing. In something like this, you may not want to see the light itself. Well, that's actually pretty simple. I'm going to put this in rendered view, and then just go to this point lamp. And then I can come down here to visibility, and you're actually not seeing it in the camera. If I was to turn this on, it doesn't really make any difference, because what we're actually seeing right here is the light reflecting off of the transmission surface and the glossy surface. If I was to turn off transmission, all of a sudden it disappears, and then you're just left with the light, but you're seeing the reflection of the glossy surface back here. See, that's one way you can go about getting rid of it. But anyway, if you have any questions, leave a comment and I will try to answer it. I hope you found this information useful. I guess that's it. Later, people.